Okay, back with another 10 NFL what ifs over the history of football. I've already done 20 of these, not 20 of these videos, but I've given 20 what ifs, 2 videos each the past 2 days. So if you like this, you can check out those two. You don't have to watch them in any particular order, but yeah, let's just get into the list. Again, these are in no particular order, starting off with the first one. If the Raiders drafted Aaron Rodgers, Calvin Johnson, and kept Randy Moss. So what am I talking about here? Well, so we all remember Aaron Rodgers fell all the way to pick 24, ultimately was selected by the Green Bay Packers, even though they had Brett Favre. The Raiders had pick number 23. They could have selected Aaron Rodgers. Their quarterback was a journeyman who would go on to that season, actually it was the year before, led the league in interceptions. So they certainly could have looked for an improvement if they wanted to. Ultimately, just didn't fall in love with Aaron Rodgers as a player, decided to go elsewhere. But had they decided to go with Aaron Rodgers, the next year was the year the Raiders finished with the first overall pick. Now, if they had Rodgers, would they have still had the first overall pick? Honestly, maybe, right? Because Rodgers was considered a project. They might have still benched him for the whole year, and everything else would have gone exactly as it did. In real life, they drafted Jamarcus Russell, but they wouldn't have needed Jamarcus Russell because they would have had a quarterback that they trust, so that they're ready to actually play in year 2. And you have Calvin Johnson, who was the next player who was selected, and they could have drafted him instead. Let's not also forget that Randy Moss was on the team at this moment. And maybe instead of Randy Moss, them saying, let's just ship him out of here, they say, hey, we got Calvin Johnson, we got Aaron Rodgers, let's just try this for a year, see how it works. Again, there's a bit of ifs that you have to work with, and there's a bit of finagling you have to do, but there is a world where you can find a way where the Oakland Raiders have Aaron Rodgers, Calvin Johnson, and Randy Moss, and if they have that, they are still the Oakland Raiders, because that's going to be, ratings gold right there. They're not moving to Las Vegas in that situation. Ultimately, it never happened. But some of those, even if you want to say, well, I don't know if we can get Rodgers and Johnson and Randy Moss, they could have gotten some of that. So ultimately, they didn't, and that's why it's a great what if. The next one actually still kind of involves the Raiders a little bit, but it involves the Buccaneers. The Bert Emanuel catch, where this is one that for the younger fans might not be one that you know about too well, but before there was the Dez Bryant, did he catch it, did he not catch it play, there was the Bert Emanuel catch, where essentially Bert Emanuel caught a football, the ball then hit the ground, but due to the rules at the time, if you catch the ball and then it touches the ground, that would count as an incomplete pass unless you had completely, finished the process of the catch before the ball touches the ground. Now, the rule is that the ball can touch the ground as long as you don't lose possession once it touches the ground. Essentially, it was just one of those plays where if you ask 100 guys in a bar, should that be a catch, they would have said yes, but due to the rules, it wasn't. No guarantee the Buccaneers go on to beat the Rams in that game, but that was the conference championship game against the Rams, who would go on to win the Super Bowl, in the one Super Bowl Kurt Warner ultimately won. Had the Buccaneers won, they would have played the Tennessee Titans, and one of two things would have happened. Either the Titans would have then been able to beat the Buccaneers, or the Buccaneers win their first Super Bowl in 1999 instead of in 2002. Now, that doesn't change NFL history too much, right? If the Titans get a Super Bowl or if the Buccaneers get a Super Bowl a little bit earlier, maybe it would have been interesting to see them win 2 in 4 years, I suppose. Except maybe they wouldn't have won 2 in 4 years, because remember, they ultimately a couple years later realized Dungy wasn't the guy to get them over the hump. They got rid of Tony Dungy and traded for John Gruden, traded 2 firsts and 2 seconds for John Gruden. This is how the Raiders become involved, because they would have still had John Gruden. So maybe that trade doesn't happen. Maybe the Buccaneers have more sustained success with Tony Dungy, or maybe they don't. Maybe they weren't able to make that transition. But also, with John Gruden with the Raiders, maybe he stays there, and maybe they're able to not completely fall off once he leaves. I guess I should say the year after he leaves, because they made the Super Bowl the first year right when he left, but then haven't won a playoff game since. So, a lot of moving parts there, but definitely has a very interesting situation around it. Another one also involving the Buccaneers, but again, it's kind of involving the Buccaneers, but involving a lot more around it, which is if Jared Cook doesn't fumble in 2020. So the 2020 playoffs, the Saints are playing the Buccaneers. The Saints have had the Buccaneers number for, it seems like, forever, and it looks like it's going to happen again. It's the midway through the third quarter. The Saints are up 7 points, and Jared Cook catches a pass to get around the 45-ish yard line of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's looking like he can get into field goal range maybe, and they can go up 10 points, and now you're in trouble, down 10 points late in the third quarter. Instead, Antoine Winfield knocks the ball out of Jared Cook's hands. Devin White recovers. The Buccaneers tie the game on the next drive, ultimately have a great fourth quarter and win the game, go on to win the Super Bowl. If that doesn't happen, there's a very good chance the Saints win that game, and I think the Saints probably do win the game if Jared Cook doesn't fumble. That would mean that it would be the Saints versus the Packers in the conference championship, meaning one of those two teams, either the Aaron Rodgers Packers or the the Drew Brees New Orleans Saints, go on to the Super Bowl. And let's not forget that in that Super Bowl, very famously, the Chiefs were missing both of their tackles. So whether it's the Packers or the Saints, the winner probably does win a Super Bowl. So either Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers probably has 2 rings, and just think about how differently we would view that. Like, if Rodgers ends up winning another Super Bowl that year, we do view his career differently. Oh, hey, he got another one late in his career. Like, there isn't that playoff choker label that really is on him. Maybe a little bit, but not to the degree of what it is right now. Or Brees wins another one, and it's just cementing him as maybe, one of the best, maybe the second best quarterback of his era, instead of kind of how he's viewed now, is a little bit behind some of those guys, at least depending on who you ask, right? Ultimately, it didn't all happen, but yeah, definitely could have been fascinating. And also, Brady wouldn't have won a ring with the Buccaneers. We would have talked about it as, hey, had some great years with the Buccaneers, but, proved that he, was still great, but maybe he needed Belichick to win it all. Ultimately, he doesn't have that kind of extra aspect to his crazy career, so that would have been fascinating as well. Number 4 on this video is the DPI is called correctly in the Superdome. We're staying with heartbreaking Saints playoff losses. I apologize, Saints fans, but I mean, yeah, the obvious nickel Roby Coleman defensive pass interference that should have been called for some reason wasn't called. The Saints would have almost certainly won the game had that been called. They would have been able to kick the go-ahead field goal with about 20 seconds left, and that probably would be enough, you would assume, with no timeouts for the Rams. Ultimately, we all know what happened. Rams win the game, and then the Patriots win the Super Bowl. A lot of people just say the Saints would have won the Super Bowl if they got to the next round, but we don't know if that's true, right? The Patriots were still a very good team who were just finding ways to win in that postseason. It's the Patriots. You could never say they would have for sure lost. Saints probably would have been, I think they would have won. That'd be my pick, right? But you just never know. But it would have been fascinating, again, if Brees gets another ring. How do we view his career differently? And due to no fault of his own, he wasn't able to get a chance that year. Although I shouldn't say it like that, because they got the ball in overtime, right? They had a chance after it, but they could have won it, and they had to kind of win it twice and weren't able to win it the second time. Next up is if the Patriots beat the Colts in 2006. I think this is an interesting one that doesn't get talked about much, because Brady already had this ridiculously great career, whatever. Everything worked out all right for New England. But what if they beat the Colts in 2006? So if you don't remember, so kind of the narrative was Peyton Manning, this awesome regular season quarterback, but Brady was the playoff guy, and whenever Manning had to play Brady, it just wasn't going to quite happen, no matter what happened. In 2006, Brady already has 3 Super Bowl rings, Manning with 0, and it was looking like it was going to be more of the same. Conference championship game. Patriots are up big, but then the Patriots offense went cold. Peyton Manning was awesome in the second half, and the Colts were able to win. But after the Colts went up late in the game, the Patriots did have an opportunity to have a drive to go back down and win. And if they did that, and they were able to win, they probably beat, again, you never know, but they probably beat the Bears the next year. Brady gets an extra ring, but also, does Peyton Manning never win a Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts? Does he never win a Super Bowl until 2015 in his last season, which would have been kind of crazy? But again, how do we view his career differently if the only Super Bowl he won was when he was kind of carried by his defense? Ultimately, easily the biggest game in Manning's career, and it part of it was due to Brady throwing an interception late. Had that not happened, maybe maybe we view Manning's career a little bit differently. Michael Vick has to be talked about, right? This is what if for a different reason, but what if he never had the dogfighting scandal, which sent him to prison? So from a personal level, certainly that is a huge what if, but also from a football level, does he stay in Atlanta? Are they able to put it all together? Is he able to continue to develop as a player? Because he was always the most exciting player to watch. He was never the best player in football, but maybe if he was able to develop normally, then he would have been able to be an MVP quality guy, or maybe he never would have. I don't know, but ultimately, it just never happened. But yeah, very, very fascinating. Also, Aaron Hernandez, who, again, these are very dark what-ifs, right? Because obviously, the talking about football in this perspective is almost feels a little silly, but it's still worth talking about. One of the all-time talents to ever play the position of tight end, and of course, we all know what happened, but definitely something I should mention in the what-if situation of what his career could have been had he not gone down the road he went down. 3 more left. First, these are more fun now. The Herschel Walker trade, which is one of the all-time what-ifs, right? One of the all-time moments in football history. Herschel Walker was traded to the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings gave up. It was actually weird, but they only gave up 1 first-round pick, but also there were some other, players that since the Cowboys decided to cut, they were able to turn into draft picks due to how the rules worked back at the time. But ultimately, the Cowboys ended up with 3 first-rounders, 3 second-rounders, and a couple other picks, which essentially set the era for the Cowboys dynasty. One of those picks was Emmitt Smith, who was one of the faces of the Cowboys dynasty, and they're able to become America's team, love it or hate it, that is what the branding is, and able to have the success to where even now people still love to talk about the Cowboys, whether you love them or hate them. If that trade never happens, the Cowboys dynasty probably never happens, certainly not the way that it would have happened. So yeah, and also now those kind of trades don't happen anymore, right? That kind of, people value draft picks more because of that. So yeah, definitely interesting. Also, I have, if Archie never met Olivia, if they never had Eli and Peyton Manning, what would the NFL look like? Of course, those guys have 4 Super Bowl titles in between them. Was the Broncos still win theirs without Peyton Manning, but you never know. I mean, part of why all those free agents signed there was to play with Peyton Manning, not realizing he was going to lose his arm that season. But, of course, I think you can think about all the years that, the way I view this, how often they beat Tom Brady. 5 times they beat Tom Brady. Those were 3 championship games and 2 Super Bowl games. So that could have easily been another handful of rings for Tom Brady. Does he have 10 Super Bowls if Archie and Olivia never meet? We never give Tom Brady a time machine. We know what he's going to do with it if that happens. And again, who knows, right? Because if Eli Manning isn't in the Super Bowl, well, then it's going to be the Packers who are in the Super Bowl or something, right? Brady doesn't just automatically win. But still, you just have to wonder how the NFL changes without the Manning brothers. So that's definitely an interesting what-if to play with. But I'm saving this one for last because I actually think it is the biggest what-if in just football history, in NFL history, because all these other ones are talking about changing players' careers, changing, teams and franchises, but there's only one that truly changes the NFL itself, and this is Joe Namath, who was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals in the NFL draft, but he instead decides to play in the AFL with the New York Jets. That then creates the situation in 1969 when the Jets then get to the Super Bowl, as it would ultimately be called, and they would beat the Baltimore Colts in the Super Bowl, one of the all-time upsets in sports history, and it really set the tone and let people realize, oh, the AFL actually can hang with the NFL. This isn't something that has 0 chance of happening. Look at what just happened. It's not only probably the biggest moment in football history, but it happened because Joe Namath decided to go away from the NFL. Had he not done that, and I think Joe Namath was pretty much always going to want to play in New York instead of Arizona, probably had a big part to do with that, but if that didn't happen, then I don't know if the merger happens the way it does. Maybe eventually it does, but not the way that it did, and would have gone down as smooth, and football would not have had the popularity it did. There's a world where if Joe Namath does not play for the Jets and they do not win that Super Bowl, the NFL just quite frankly doesn't make it to 2025. Like that sounds crazy, but that's actually not true. Football was not as popular as you might think compared to other sports like baseball at the time. So to me, that is easily the biggest what if. So yeah, check out the other couple videos I made if you're interested in this kind of thing. Let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.